Okay, everyone. We're gonna kick this off now. Can you hear me all right? I think it's all right. All right, well, welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. We'll start off by just thanking all of our affiliates. Yeah, as I've always said, we wouldn't exist if it wasn't for you guys, so thank you for your ongoing support and commitment of our association. Thanks to all of our corporate members, so just encouraging anyone here who runs a business to sign up as a corporate member. Your corporate fees go towards our education fund to help the next generation of consultants. And that's $400 a year for your business to be part of that. So it's not a huge amount of money, but join up. So yeah, tonight we just want to say special thanks. Frank Spinelli bailed on us an hour ago. So I think he's scared of some of the, I don't know how to turn that off. I think someone's playing it over there. Wait. Yeah, sorry about the music. So yeah, Frank was coming. Hopefully you'll come to our next meeting. Tristan, if you want to wave your hand. Tristan from Fair Trading. We did have Charlie Gauchi coming, but he didn't make it either. But hopefully Charlie will be our next one. And Rod Jackson, who is no longer at TAFE and is now Master Plumbers New South Wales rep. So Rod, I did see you. Where's Rod hiding? Oh, Rod's down the back. So for those who want to know, Rod's now running Master Plumbers apprentices. You're involved in the education space. They're using his educational expertise over there. James Milton from Sydney Water is here down the back. So yeah, sorry, James, I didn't have your name on the list, but that's all right. And then we have David Jong Neal, if I pronounced your name correctly, David. Yep, David's down here. So David's come up from Canberra. He's from Wells, which for those who have seen the sticker but don't know who Wells are, I was asking David earlier, they're government owned by the government, but you're saying 80% funded by industry. So that's when people get their products rated, that money goes back. Yep. And then 10% by federal government, 10% by state. Was that correct? Yeah. So anyone that's interested, Wells reached out to us late last year, and we're going to try and educate people a little bit more in who Wells are, what they do, and what the process is. So Max Rafferty from Master Builders. I don't know if I've seen Max. Are you here, Max? No? Okay. And then, yeah, big thanks to our plumbers. So Mr. Alafaci, did you make it? No, not here yet. Dan Bennett? No, you didn't make it either. Okay. The boys from Axis, Jeremy and Barry. Oh, you're here? Okay. So we've got the Axis boys. Oh, okay. Replacement for Jeremy. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for coming. And then Tim Brady from High Marsh. Did you make it? No, we've had a few bows. Okay. That's right. Okay. So we've also invited Warren along tonight. So he's got some fire rated brackets on the tables there that he'll jump up shortly and fill us in on. And then Mark Babister from WMA Water. So he's doing a talk for us tonight on AR&R. I'm sure that Greg Morgan on here is the Greg Morgan I know. Who is Greg here? No, that's all right. I don't think he actually works there. Okay, so for our meeting tonight, we have Mark talking about Australian rainfall and runoff, a bunch of different things, but one of the main things is the change from ARI to AEP and the change of that terminology and the change to rainfall intensities generally in most areas going up, but a lot more insight than what we're used to on that topic. And then Tom's getting up to do a talk on balcony drainage. I've called it the good, the bad, and the ugly, but Tom's called it what good looks like. So you've been on New South Wales Government Committee for almost 2 years. Yeah, talking about balconies on a semi-regular basis. So Tom's got some good insights. It's a big insurance issue in New South Wales at the moment. So hopefully we can all take something away from that on how to design balcony drainage better. Okay, so committee report. this is just a list of our emails, just so everyone sees. If you're not getting emails, let us know. We have had a few people having issues. But that's the list of emails since our last meeting. So we had our nominations for new committee members went out back in March, which will be announced tonight. Then our CPD program, again, if you're an affiliate in the room and you haven't done a CPD presentation for a while, get in touch with Emily and book it in. So that's every second week on a Tuesday at lunchtime. And then in the spotlight, if you haven't contacted Emily about that as well, just let her know that you'd like to do that. And that's a opportunity for you to really showcase any new products or just your business in general. So we have ABCB are doing Plumbing Code of Australia seminars this year all around Australia. So everyone should be able to make it to one of those. I don't know if they're charging. I think they're free. Do you know, Tristan, do you know if they cost, do they? How much are they? Free. Oh, okay, no cost. Okay. Not they cost. All right, excellent. Okay. This is just an update from the guys over in Adelaide. Mainly one of the issues they've been having is a lot of people had unsubscribed from emails and weren't getting emails, but they ticked the little unsubscribe button. So if you have the same issue, you can log into the portal yourselves on the website and retick those boxes, or you can contact Emily or myself and we can find out what's going on for you. Yeah, that's probably the main thing. They've got their meeting next week. So anybody in the room here is welcome to go to the Adelaide meeting. So they are typically having their meeting the week after us. And then Hobart and Canberra will be rotated. So they'll have 2 to 3 meetings a year in Hobart and Canberra, where Adelaide will be every second month like we are. But again, so that the Canberra meeting's in 2 weeks on Thursday night for anyone that wants to go to the Canberra meeting. And then the Hobart one will be in July, I think. Okay, Warren, do you want to jump up and run us through your brackets quickly, wherever Warren is? Oh, he's down the back here. So just so everyone knows, Dave Wood sent me an email back in January. We've been looking for a long time for fire rated brackets that actually comply with the standard so that you don't have to put a sprinkler head next to the bracket, all those other issues. We've had a few products flicked our way that we thought complied, but when we did a bit of digging, didn't. So Warren's going to run through this fairly new product that's in front of you. And hopefully that can solve some of the problems out there for both plumbers and consultants. Thanks, Warren.
There he's going. Okay, obviously we've got fire rated hydrant and service pipe supports. The only one that's 100% compliant. The only solution is independent third-party accredited through the Active Fire Scheme through CSIRO. Complies AS 2419, 94 when it was first introduced, this particular part in the code, right up to the new code of 2021, but mainly obviously 2005, which is the NCC is adopted right now. At the moment, we're compliant to 4 metre spacings up to 150 mil pipe. The only solution that's AS 1530.4, 2004, section 12N2 compliant, and that's the fire resistance test for elements of construction. We've also got our own insurance with 20 mil public liability through Berkeley Insurance. So when you do specify these, you know that it's backed by somebody. The only solution that's easier to install, so we've made it, I'm a plumber myself, I've made it so it's easier to install. It's quicker, safer, and cleaner for all customers. Only solution, obviously, I just said, safe to install for the workers requiring less time on the ladders and scaffolding equipment, minimising risk. Fail-safe installation is it's left-hand threat. So your apprentice or your blokes there can't go down to Bunnings or can't go to to Reese and get a right-hand nut. So it's left-hand thread, so you evolution with factor of support and knowledge. People only need to ring me. I'm more than happy to talk to them. I'm more than happy to talk to the plumbers that are putting them in. I'm more than happy to talk to the suppliers. I'm more than happy to talk to whoever I got to get the brackets in. We've got more products coming, seismic fixings, the rod sockets. There are some rod sockets there that we've already made. And that's about it. So we do have a couple of, we've got a fail on one of the tables on table 4, I think it is, table 2, one of the rods that failed. So if you just want to pass that around and just have a look at how the rods fail, you'll see. And that's it there. This is like a big oven, basically. So look, for 6-inch, 4 meters, it's got to be a weight on it for 421 kilos at 940 degrees for 60 minutes, basically. It's got to hold that weight. So if you go less, it's obviously less kilos or whatever, but at the moment we go 4 meters and it's 421 kilos. Any other questions? No? All good? Righto, sweet. Thank you. Very much.
So you are welcome. If anyone wants to take one of those samples back to their office, you're welcome to take a sample with you. On this table, we reserve it for access because the plumber's probably not. And then there's more over here. There's a bunch of different types of brackets over there that he's brought along that you can have a look at, and business cards. So he didn't pay for that as well, just so everyone knows. That was it's a product that the market's wanted for a long time, so we've just jumped on promoting it to you guys. So anything that anyone is aware of that is a solution for our industry, just let us know, and we're always keen to get new ideas in front of people to help them. So we put this up at the last meeting, but just a reminder, we do have our design guide in draft format, which talks about 50% DNC designs, 70% DNC designs, what should be included in those designs and those contracts. So yeah, that's available on our website. You can download it, have a look through it. We want to get people to start using that as a basis for the minimum design for a particular type of project. So any input on that would be appreciated. We've got a bunch of ITPs. So any of the plumbers in the room, we're trying to lift the standard of ITPs for plumbers out there. So they're free on our website. So yeah, testing a stack, testing a water service. You can download those in Word format and modify them. And then the commissioning side for the engineers. And then we've got our advisory notes that were meant to go out a few weeks ago. We're still making some finishing touches to those, but our big ones, the clear outs in apartments that have been an issue for a lot of different class 2 jobs out there. That's the list of the testing and commissioning documents. And yeah, just a bit of a snapshot for you of what's on the website now. Yeah, a reminder of our CPD. So again, I think most people know, but you need to have 25 points a year now to maintain your accreditation with the New South Wales government. Attending tonight, you do get 2 points. Attending a CPD session on a Tuesday, you get 1 point for the hour, and then you can get points for subscribing to the Plumbing Connection. There's a whole series of different ways of getting it, but you have to lodge those points on our website to get the points. Other than for tonight's meeting, they automatically get credited to your name by Emily. Matt Lloyd, are you, I don't know if Matt, do you make it tonight, Matt? Are you here? He is? Over here. Okay. So, yeah, we've done a bit of a plug here for Matt. He's moved from Jebret after 10 years. 8 years, yeah, across to Rehau. Yeah, so just a reminder to anyone else that moves around or have new staff, let us know, and we're happy to introduce them to the room. But Matt's obviously been a big player in this space for many years, and he's very much appreciated. So yeah, if you need Matt's number, it's actually changed. He didn't take his Jebret number with him. He's left that, and he's got a new Rehau number that you can get off him tonight. And then a little thing there, they do have a area sales manager position. But you can talk to Matt about that. I'm not sure exactly on the details of that, but okay. So we did put out, under our constitution, we have positions for up to 9 directors at the moment. We can change that to increase it later on if we want to. We started with 4 of us. There was myself, David Wood, Derek, who's in South Australia, and David Sablina. David Sablina's now stepped down after 3 years. So every 3 years we have this rotating positions where there's an opportunity for new people to step up. So Alfie Quick, as the slide says, he works at KBR over in Adelaide. I think he's 29, but he's been on the Adelaide committee for a while. So if you do go to Adelaide, say hi to him. But we've now increased our directors from 4 to 8 positions. Rod Ware, everyone knows Rod, so I don't really need to introduce him too much. But yeah, so Rod's actually a Tam. When I had to sign him up as a director on ASIC today, actually, he's a Tamworth boy. So if anyone's from out Tamworth way, that's where Rod grew up. But yeah, one of the things when you fill out your director's forms, you have to put where people are born. So and he's also our education manager. So Rod, do you want to jump up and give an update on what's happening at TAFE? Yeah, we can't get Rod Jackson to do it anymore because he's left TAFE, but he's almost a broken man from 20 years at TAFE. But
Good evening, everyone. Hey, look, I'll keep it pretty short. Again, it's me requesting some help. Last time I was here, I was asking for teachers. I have had good response from that. We've had about 7 people put their hand up and say, yes, I'm interested in teaching. All but one of those will need to complete their TAE, like we talked about before, which is a 12-month course to say, yes, you have the ability to teach. One of those is started and probably about halfway through. But what I want to talk about tonight is probably going to affect a fair bit of the industry. So we have a scenario because of this new legislation where people that have been teaching for many years, they might have come off the back of a civil degree or a mechanical degree or some other education format, want to get their diploma through an RPL basis of assessment. Now, at the moment, TAFE don't have that ability just yet. We've been focusing pretty heavily on just getting the course going for our youngsters coming up and through the ranks, but what they need to build is what we call an RPL tool. So if someone comes in and says, hey, I know everything about plumbing that there is to know, they will basically go through a checklist and say, all right, if you can tick all these boxes, then yes, we'll give you the diploma and qualify you. We need someone to help TAFE write that document. Now they are going to provide you with the format and the structure, if you like, of that document, but they need someone that has industry experience and knowledge of the current industry to be able to feed information into that, right? It's probably somewhere in the order of 40 to 50 hours work. It is paid work. I don't know the exact rate. It's probably somewhere between $70 and $80 an hour. We don't know the exact details of how you'll be paid just yet, but if I can get 1 or 2 people that might be interested, we can then have a chat with TAFE and figure out how that might work. I stress that this is a fairly important one because I think we're going to end up with a lot of people queuing up saying, I want RPL. And if TAFE can't offer that, it's all going to fall in a heap, and there's going to be a lot of frustrated people that know exactly what they're doing that cannot sign off on a job purely because they don't have that diploma. All right, so if you're vaguely interested, if you think you know your stuff, and you don't have to have the TAE for this one. You're a subject matter expert. You are someone that knows the industry and what's all about plumbing. So if anyone is keen, please get in contact with me. I imagine you'll probably know my face or email or phone number by now, but yeah, give us a call and happy to have a chat about it. Cool, thank you.
So the email address for those that don't know is education@hcaa.org.au, and it's also on the website. So we do have a new affiliate member, Ozpress. I don't think there's anyone here tonight, but just letting people know. So partnerships, we've recently signed, Rod and I signed a memorandum of understanding with the Institute of Plumbing. So you'll see them put up their newsletter on our LinkedIn page once a month, and we'll forward that around to the members. Just as a way of working with the industry, same reason we've got the boys from Access here and other plumbers along. We're trying to work with the industry better. HCAA WA, we have not a written memorandum of understanding, but they have joined as a member of HCAA. Queensland, we had a joint meeting with Queensland last year, but we're going to continue working with Queensland. And then Victoria, I have been emailing back and forth with Matt Yanez for any of the Victorian sales reps. Matt's going to give me a call tomorrow, but we're just, again, trying to work in better around the country and just share our knowledge with each other. So yeah, if you see that Institute of Plumbing newsletter, that's where that's come from. So the diploma, Rod's just jumped up and give us an update on that, but I think we still have, I don't know if you mentioned numbers, we're still up around that 150 people waiting to do it, and you've got that first group of 30. Yeah, so it's going to take a while to get through that list. So bank balance currently 156,000. We do have renewals going out in about a month. So we're looking quite good in that space at the moment. The new standards 2419/2021. We had Mark Porter at our last meeting did a presentation on the changes in 2021. And he's also going to run a CPD session. Do we have a date locked in, Em, for the CPD with Mark? Beginning of June. Okay. 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 So if you have, that was, Em was saying, if you have any questions specifically about the new standard, send them into Em and she'll forward them to Mark so he can try and direct it. Is it 2 2-hour sessions? 2 1.5-hour sessions. So it'll be similar to what he did for the Certifiers Association, but he's trying to make it a little bit more directed towards our members. So I'm sure that'll be good. Yep. 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 Yeah. Thanks, Rod. So we do have trade waste standard due to come out in draft format later this year. That keeps getting delayed, but that's specifically focused around grease arresters and the manufacture of grease arresters. So we are planning on having Kate from ACO currently sits on there, and she was going to do a presentation for us last year, but because it's been delayed, hopefully that'll be later this year. And then AS 5601, the gas standard, is, I don't know if it'll be called 2021 or 2022, but that is due to come out later this year. And then for those who don't know, New South Wales have now fallen in line with other states, and as soon as it's published, we will adopt it within 6 months of it being published. So you'll have a choice as a plumber to either use the old version or the new version for 6 months. And then once that 6 months is up, you have to install to the new standard once it's been published. Is it talking about hydrogen? It's not talking about hydrogen yet, other than the committee are talking about hydrogen. Yeah. So there's nothing in, I think it will probably be a completely separate standard, but I'm not quite sure where that's going to go. So I think most people in the room would know that the world is pushing quickly towards hydrogen. So we now have most appliances now handle up to 10% hydrogen. There's a push to get them to take up to 50%, I think, over the next couple of years, and then to possibly have 100% hydrogen over the next 5 or 6 years. But that's still a space that's evolving, but being pushed quite quickly over in Germany and other parts of Europe. So I touched on this a little bit before, but just to run through. So we do have our affiliate committee members. Kate's been our affiliate member for the last couple of years. We also had Chris Patelli, if he's here tonight, he was on there for a while. So this year we still have Kate's continuing on. We've got Matt Lloyd has started as our affiliate rep, and Nick Moore from Saniflow. So he's up in Queensland. The aim there, next time it comes up, any affiliates that want to contribute, it's again just trying to help us represent everyone in the room here and not just consultants. So Kate's brought a lot of new ideas onto the committee, which we've implemented, which is the CPD sessions, and other little things. But yeah, if you see that email, I'll come around again in probably 12 months time. Feel free to put your hand up, because we're always looking for people who are happy to contribute. So tonight's Dodgy Award goes to Paul Angus for the guillotine urinal and the rock climbing urinal. So Paul, if you want to come out and accept your bottle of wine. You want white or red? Red. So the dodgy photos have been getting light on. So start sending them through again so we can get some good photos going. We have had some really good ones in the past, and they're good as well. They're not actually really dodgy. Those ones are actually some good stuff. And you guys are welcome to send them too. If you see dodgy stuff, flick them in. Just don't tell us who the plumber is. Yeah. All right. Okay. So directors, David Wood doesn't like having his photo, so I've got the question mark up there. Derek in the middle there from Adelaide, for those who haven't met him, he did come to our meeting 3 years ago when we started. And then these are our new directors. So we've got Mr. Petkovic from down in Tassie. Paul Angus, who just came out and accepted his award. Alfie Quick there in the middle. And then Carl Somerville, who's down in Canberra. So yeah, if anyone's going down to Canberra in 2 weeks, you can say hi to Carl. Okay, so Dave Sablina, I might get you up. I touched on this last meeting, but after 6 years, I think, in the president role and now running my own business, I've decided to hand over the baton, and I'll be staying on as a director, but we've got someone new, so thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Nick. It's a big night, so I'll keep it brief. Oops, I just stuffed something up.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've dropped the ball on. I haven't changed that to say 2022. Oh, what have you done, Dave?
I just touched the button. What?
Oh, you've jumped to the end or something. I don't know how I'm gonna.
Don't show everyone what the surprise slide is.
I don't know how I'm gonna go back. All right, we'll go really fast.
No, don't look at the screen.
Everyone knows what they're in for now. Oh, there we go. We made it.
Oh, well done, mate.
Oh, there we go.
Thank Christ for that. That would have been a bit premature. Thanks, Nick. So I have the duty of announcing who the new president will be that will lead this organisation into the future. But before I do that, it'd be inappropriate if a few words weren't said about Nick Soden. So Nick joined the committee in 2013. It was a bright-eyed and bushy-tailed young chap a bit like a rabbit in the headlights, I think. He joined the committee and he did such a wonderful job behind the scenes that in 2017, he became president of the then HCAA New South Wales. Now, a bit of a history lesson. Back in 1974, the HCAA was incorporated. And back then, we invited all states to play in the hydraulic sandpit, as it were. And for many years, that's what we did. We shared information, we had meetings in each other's corners of the sandpit, and we invited friends, and we had lots of celebrations, and it worked really well. Around about 2018 to the end of 2019, there were some members who didn't like playing in the sandpit, and they wanted to, they didn't want to share their toys. And in fact, they tried to rename the sandpit and pinch the logo of the sandpit. The logo at the time wasn't registered. And so they took that on board themselves and then suggested to us, New South Wales, that we couldn't use the logo because they owned it at their corner of the sandpit. So a decision was made by the committee. It was a rather strenuous time for us to build our own sandpit and go somewhere else. And that's what we did. So around May 2019, HCAA was incorporated, and Nick continued as president of the HCAA until today. Around 2020, we had the ACT come on board. We had Canberra and SA members come around in July 2020. We had Tasmania come on board in 2021. In August 2019, we had our first meeting in New Zealand. So in that 12-month period after incorporation of HCAA, the committee were very busy trying to create a new environment, as it were. And I think we did, and much to Nick's credit. A lot of changes happened in Nick's tenure, including, I've got a list of 24 items. Did I just stuff up the slide again? Sorry, mate. Is that your design? Oh, no. Oh, it's on here. Don't worry about it. HCAA flyer membership categories, the water management program with the water meters, design guides, practice notes, advisory notes, introducing affiliates into management meetings, up-to-date standards and feedback, great PowerPoint presentation, the Dodgy Award. Wasn't my idea, it was yours. Well done. Australian hydraulic design qualifications, project stage and percentage of completeness. Look, there's a list, goes on. Nick's really made his mark and his stamp on this association, and I'm proud to have been in the background of that, and the committee, and I think everyone here, Nick, thank you for your term. Thank you very much. Now, we don't have a lot of money, but we did get you something in a frame. So would you like to collect your award? So, the person with the most difficult task now is to take on board what has been created and to take this association into a new era. And I say new era because we had the difficult moments the last 2 years through COVID. I think we struggled through that, but we managed to have Teams meetings and we did as best we could. I think with new technology coming into the building industry, digital technology and the like, there's an opportunity for some fresh blood to come in with some new ideas. And that person, I'm pleased to say, will fit the bill. And that person is me. I've stuffed it.
Yeah, you did a load of one of my designs. There you go.
That person is Paul Angus. Come up, Paul. Now, I haven't read this through, but he's a qualified plumber, which is a good thing, and a hydraulic engineer, experienced in the UK and the Middle East. He's a degree in building services, which is a lot more than most of us have here, which is good also. Look, he's got a list of qualifications, and when I first met Paul, he was representing CIBSE in Australia, which is probably one of the first times I'd heard of CIBSE. So I was quite impressed by that. But more impressed I am with him on a weekly basis when he posts on Instagram of all the functions he goes to and parties and the like. So I think Paul has the right spirit, and we all encourage everybody here to support him. Well done, Paul.
Oh, geez. Speech. Alrighty. So thank you, Dave, for the very kind words. I'll keep it short and sweet. This is really weird because I'm long-sighted, but I'm seeing everyone really blurry from the glasses. So I'd like to start by echoing Dave's sort of summary of Nick's achievements. So I'd also like to personally thank Nick. Thank you, Nick. I'm sure everyone agrees he's gone above and beyond with dedication, passion, and hard work, and you've poured into the association. It's really been phenomenal to work with you, and I'm really happy to sort of say that you're my friend. Yeah. I can actually recall when Nick actually floated the idea that he was going to stand down, and I immediately thought, and probably everyone else thought in the room, who the I don't want to swear, but geez, who's actually going to step up and take up that position? It's massive boots to fill. And I never thought in a million years that it would be me. But what happened was I actually got nominated for this, and thanks, Nick, for nominating me. And thanks for the committee for backing me, and everyone else for backing me as well. But it's a funny story. I actually I missed a committee meeting. And what happened was I got a text message. I think I was building furniture. Sorry, I got my glasses on. I was building furniture, and I missed the committee meeting. I completely forgot about it. And I emailed Nick. And so Nick texted me, or Nick, you sent me an email, didn't you? And you sent some updates. And I emailed Nick, and I said to him, "What have I missed?" You know? And he goes, "Oh, nothing much, nothing much. Oh, by the way, you are going to be the next president." It's like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, of course I am. Yeah. And this happened for maybe about an hour and a half, eh? And I also, so off the back of that, I text Tom, and then off the back of that, I get a voicemail of Tom and Tom's partner Jen telling me this is happening, and I still didn't believe it. And so after about maybe 2 hours or 3 hours in the morning, we had a phone call, we had a good chat, and it was fact, yeah. So thanks for that. So I think the moral of the story there is don't miss a committee meeting ever. So anyway, just to summarize, the HCAA is all about you, our members, and I'm truly honored to represent each and every one of you. Together, we can continue to expand upon the strong foundations that Nick and the committee have developed. This includes the support network that the newly appointed directors that Dave and Nick had just spoke about, not only here, but around Australia. And not forgetting the fantastic work that Rod Ware has done in the education space, and that's encouraging new blood into the industry. So well done, Rod. That's about it, really. Together, we are the HCAA, so let's do this. So thank you very much. Thanks.
So we'll take a 10-minute break for everyone. But before we do, yeah, I just want to say a big thank you. Paul, the reason I did nominate him is he has been a bit of a, well, that stupid microphone thing fell. He's been a bit of a mentor for me over the years, even though he might not feel it. He encouraged me to step up as president many years ago. And I have really enjoyed doing what I've done, but I think I've probably bored you guys telling you I've started my own business 18 months ago. I live between here and Brisbane now. So even just coming down for these meetings means 2 days off work for me and $450 in diesel. I think I told someone. But I do it for the love of the industry because I do really care about this industry. Plumbing was what got me here originally because I dropped out of school, went into plumbing, spent 6 years doing that. And then a few people said, you got to get out while you got the chance before your knees are screwed and your back stuff. And then David Wood offered me opportunity, but yeah, big thanks to David for your support over the years. And also the next generation for the guys in here that are under 30. I can't see too many under 30, but yeah, my similar to Paul being nominated as president by me, I came along to a committee meeting because Dave dragged me along. And the moment I arrived, they said, you know, once you come here, you can't get out of here. And I thought it was a joke, but 10 years later, I'm still here. But yeah, thank you everybody for your support. I'm sure Paul is going to do a great job. He's got a lot of experience with SIBSI, with different committees, and I think he's going to help the association grow, and expanding the directorship as well is going to help us to be stronger, introducing people in other states. And I'm sure this won't be the end of HCAA, but we're going to get bigger and better. So thank you everyone for coming tonight, and we'll take a break before we have our first speaker. Thanks.
Very good. I was starting to get worried you're going to name someone now.
Yep.
Okay.
I'll wait for the
Because I know how hard it is not to say. Very good.
Sorry,
Why would and when you sat down before. It's also on the sketch up there. Sorry, I've been at something before, but I thought maybe you were talking about way back in the day. Because Jesus has put me on. Or changing of the yeah, it's hard to do. I don't think it's 6 months. Oh, is it?
Do you remember me? I saw you outside. I said to my boss, oh, you just walked straight past. I said, oh, yeah, good. How are you? I know, and I saw you guys with Jeremy waving and stuff. And you're like, oh, that's what Jeremy. I know, you're like, oh, that's what Jeremy. I thought, oh, Jeremy here. And then I looked over and I do know Jeremy. Yeah. How are you? How's that system? Yeah.
Wow.
Grease separators. You know we do grease separators. So who's like, is that small work? Classified as small work? Okay. Yeah. So who's your kind of, yeah, Jeremy. And now that you're our access, I guess.
Yeah, so we'll just pull up here, and then you can pick somewhere to spin it.
Very different.
But there's the
And
next
clients
slide
are
there.
Very different.
Hidden behind that. Just there, cross arrow.
Oh, okay.
And then that'll come up into there because that's what's on the screen.
Yep. And does it say the person's name? Is that off?
Yep.
Can't see that.
Is there a pen? Yeah, it's here, Roger. Yeah. Come on. It's gonna take ages, I think. What do you get a picture of it? See the nurse? I'll go in here again. Oh, Tom will know. Mark Babison. Mark Babison. Just text that to you. And then the other one's Tom Wise, so yeah. I know, so okay. So just introduce him, that's just the next thing. Yeah, so he's a flood modeler. But then has a lot more to do with AI.
Doing a bit of work with their people and Michael or something is he's really good. I've got you got his name. I dragged him in. Thanks for all.
I feel like that mic could probably turn up a tiny bit. Pull a bit closer to you. Yeah, no, yeah. Yeah, there's a few people in Newcastle. Which is where I used to live. I live in Sydney, Newcastle. There's a guy from Sure, from Newcastle here, but there's a couple other guys from Newcastle. You got like probably 200 consultants in Sydney. There's about 6 in Newcastle. Me and Corey, one guy from Boston. Tina from Gold Coast. And then so it's like, there's not very many regional areas. Yeah, he's got like 4 kids. And a Greek wife.
rather than kids know my parents. And that's, I don't know, we spent a couple of years up there. So we may move back. May stay there, I don't know. But business kind of burn. Business is your business. Yeah. Service is so that's been very beneficial. I was a shareholder at Pay. So I've learned certain things in there, but they're kind of 600 staff Australia-wide, gearing themselves up to themselves. So I was one of the shareholders, and I feel like I was just there when they sell it, and the work is small. I'm left there with us on the new multinational. Yeah, and I wasn't really, I could see the writing on the wall. I wasn't too keen on that. I like the company, but I didn't want to be. I feel like the culture changes when they get sold. Yeah, and if people get miserable, sort of like halfway through the stuff gets going. Yeah, stuff gets yeah, and then they bring in all these new corporate international procedures that just, well, yeah, and then I've been on the big jobs like. You go home, sleep like 3 minutes a day. So now I'm just whatever. But it was just, which is cool. I've done the biggest stuff. Yeah, I don't have enough. Yeah, so I had to do a diploma in my college, which is at TAFE, New South Wales. So it's written by the federal government. Basically, when you start meeting minutes every week, no. I'm talking about my laptop into the meeting. Intellectual space. It's on Teams. Well, where the rest of us, I think maybe it's just but the deployments, this is back in 2 nights a week.
We've always had a choice. Like on the design side, we've always had a choice. Like, and it's like one of the reasons why some people might choose to work for us.
And then you have to study at night.
You know, if you live far away,
yeah, so it's a fair process, but then taking New South Wales years ago, where it's good, because the government's introduced all this red tape. So there's a real shortage of engineers now. A lot of the civil tech guys try it,
great.
and they realise they just don't like it. Some of them stay, a lot of them
Make a decision like right there.
so we've been working for 5 years at Rock to try and get the so Rod Jackson actually, the former tape teacher, still his apprentice. And then we were working with him, zipping and tape for 25, 30 years. And he's only just left 4 months ago. But it took us 5 years to basically rewrite the diploma. We got a grant from the South African money to pay our members to be and then basically try and get the next generation. So we would like even civil engineers and mechanical engineers. Civil engineering teaches you civil engineering, but doesn't teach you plumbing. So if we would like to get to that minimum standard, because we do get some engineers come in, they've got the smarts on paper, they don't understand plumbing. So some of them just don't. What's others are I've got a mate in Brisbane who's a civil engineer. He's an 8.
Yeah, it's the same experience. They do the station, they build the airspace, you get food, his house and station, you build the station for free, yada yada yada.
But the same with this plumbers that come in, they should say, so it's sort of it's been, and that's why we exist. Yeah, and then we've tried in the past, but they've just talked to me on it. So, yeah, that's it. They're just a bunch of schools. So that's why And the thing is, the guys I actually been in Australia, seeing on Australian standards and other communities around the world, it's the kind of blokes that do engineering degrees but couldn't actually make it. And then they end up working in Australia, paying back at there. They don't understand like so much. I'll say that they're not smart people, but I feel like there's something quite understand. Civil engineering goes back to Australia after
My understanding is that if you have an unstable building, you can't use
I'm sure there's some other guys in there, but yeah, all the ones I've met, they seem like just people that would keep the job.
really. Can't use copper. Unstable. That worries me a little bit on the single start. I don't want to be the last thing. I think you just need to. Sometimes they will ask for far out factors as well. I might just be something. But you'll find them all. We usually have the like probably has a fire rating which is suitable. The most jobs that people
Yeah, well, that's why like here it's it really is. Well, I find that and Beck and Alec don't get much voice for all the engineers. So those guys, I don't know if
So how do you fit into all this? Oh, great. Cool. That's why we came. You're the man.
Yep. I think it's already on.
All right, everyone, we're going to get started again in about 60 seconds. So if you can get back to your seats, that'd be great. Thank you. Microphone action. Alrighty, we're going to get started, guys. I'm going to sit down. Okay, without further ado, we're going to get shown the road. So our next speaker is Mark Babister. I haven't got my glasses, so please welcome to the stage Mark, please.
Okay, thanks Paul and Nick for asking me to come here tonight. Yeah, my name is Mark Babister. What I want to talk about is Australian rainfall and runoff, but really how that affects people in your industry, not so much my industry. So I'm a flood engineer and I'm pretty much was chair of the team that updated what's called Australian rainfall and runoff, which we use for flood estimation, what happens in people's backyards, all the way up to sort of the Murray-Darling. And people in my space in the flooding were a little bit busy at the moment, but I was pretty keen to come here and talk to you and try and demystify a few things. And Nick said he wanted me to talk about two things specifically, the rainfalls that we use that I guess are used in your industry and probability terminology. And if you've got questions about probability terminology, don't feel bad because most people in my industry do too. Hopefully I'll demystify it. So Australian rainfall and runoff, shouldn't have put the letters up there. I should have spelt it out. It's the national guideline for flood estimation, but it also deals with rainfall. I should say too, if I don't make too much sense, I can't help you too much because on my committee that updated the standard, I was the only one who wasn't a professor. So I'm going to try and have it in simple language, and that was my job too. So Australian rainfall and runoff is the national guideline for flood estimation, stormwater, and a whole lot of things. It's been going for a very long time, and we updated it in 2016. The previous version was 30 years earlier, and computers were sort of invented and made public in that period. So the leap was a bit of a quantum leap because we moved from hand calculations. But you know, people were doing this in the 50s, and you probably don't need to worry too much about this slide. Big changes in practice. Basically, a lot of stuff changed, but a couple of things. The rainfalls have been significantly updated and climate change. Now, climate change probably hasn't hit your industry yet, but don't worry, it will if you're designing things like roof gutters and other bits and pieces. And I would not be surprised if it becomes mandated out of the flood inquiry over the flooding up at Lismore and Woodburn and other places. So that might change a few things, and it probably will be a bit brutal when it happens. And one of the things that we also changed is probability terms, and which is why I guess I'm being invited here. But this is an old long-term argument. They were arguing about it in 1987 when I was finishing university, where they were writing the previous version. And we're also trying to deal with things like uncertainty. So probability. People here, I presume, have heard the term ARI, average recurrence interval. Okay, well, I'm sorry, we're going to put that in the bin tonight, and I'm going to hopefully explain why. But I'm going to let you all talk about it amongst yourself in your industry. But if you talk to other people, I'd really prefer you didn't use that terminology. And hopefully at the end of tonight, you'll believe me. And when we talk about probability, it's all about communicating the risk and what could happen to the public, to politicians, because they're, you know, not as smart as the public, and often to decision makers who need things compressed into a pretty small, short format. And we want people to understand risk. And the problem is we're people, in terms of managing risk, particularly rare risks, we want to make sure we get paid on a Friday, or we get dinner tonight, or we've got somewhere to go home to live. We're not real good at looking about what's going to happen in a 1 in 100 year or 1% flood, or up at Lismore, it's about a 1 in 500 when water's 2 stories up in people's houses. And people need to understand that. So in terms of clarity of meaning, which was a big thing, the term recurrence interval and return period, like a flood has a 10-year return period or a 100-year return period, is really being complicated. It's misused. The media love it. And it doesn't really convey too much about the probability. Floods and rainfalls, even 5-minute rainfalls or 1-minute rainfalls that would affect a gutter, occur relatively randomly. But what you might have noticed this year, if you've been trying to mow your lawn like me, is floods on heavy rainfalls are clustered. We go through these periods. This has been a tough year for rainfall. Not as tough as other years, like some years in the 50s. There might be a few people who were born then, might remember it. 74 was pretty bad. Despite what was on the media, there's been worse years in terms of rainfall. But probability has been a contentious issue. And irrespective of what your professional group uses, we'd really try and make sure when you communicate these things to the public that you help them understand the risk. So what we've used in the past most of the time is what we call average recurrence interval. That's how long on average, and you need to emphasize that before that happens again. Unfortunately, the average is the important part, the recurrence interval is the easy part. And these averages are not representative, and they work all right in Sydney, but if you're in Brisbane, they don't work at all. Particularly if you're going to look at something that happens every 3 months. If you happen something that looks every 2 years, that's not too bad. But 3 months doesn't work in Brisbane, doesn't work in Melbourne, sort of works a bit in Sydney. And it's always misunderstood for large floods as well, or large rainfall events. So we had some really big rainfall events in New Zealand, in Auckland, flooded a huge number of houses. And somebody wrote into the local paper and said, we've had a 100-year flood. The best thing the government can do is let people build in the floodplain, build new houses and stimulate the economy, because we won't have another flood for 100 years and those houses will be worn out by the time the next flood occurs. So you can see my point that average recurrence interval doesn't work terribly well if people are going to make decisions on that basis. We've had one, we're safe for 100 years. Well, it actually doesn't work like that at all. Each year, there's a 1 in 100 chance it'll happen again. And some people win lotto twice. I don't play lotto because I wouldn't win anyway, but, and most people lose and don't win lotto. And so each year you've got a 1 in 100-year chance of something occurring. And that is very different. You know, you roll a dice, you could be lucky, and might not be each year. In Brisbane, we had 2 floods in the 1890s, 2 weeks apart, that were bigger than anything we've ever seen, including the flood in 2011. And in fact, the Queensland Navy, because we weren't federated, had a ship, or 2 ships, ended up in the Botanical Gardens, and they go, how are we going to get these ships out, these Navy ships out? They waited 2 weeks and they flooded out 2 weeks later. Otherwise, they'd still be there. And the other problem with recurrence interval is with climate change, and climate change is real. We are seeing what we call statistically significant increases in rainfall. I can't say events are attributed to climate change, but it is statistically significant all around Australia, well, up to Cairns and south from there. It's not quite so clear further north because it's hotter. And I can't say I'm designing a gutter, it's going to be 1 in, what do you use, 1 in 5, 1 in 10, isn't it? I can't remember anymore. What for a gutter? 1%. And it'll be overflow every 100 years or over whatever else. But in 2090, it'll overflow every 70 years. So it's got a recurrence interval now of 100 years. But in 2090, which is only 70 years away, it'll have a recurrence interval of 1 in 60 or 1 in 70. So it doesn't sort of work with climate change. You can't talk about recurrence intervals with climate change because it's really about an annualized risk. But it is loved by news outlets. They love it, you know, they don't care. Just find some gauge somewhere that's recorded some rainfall that's really rare and put it on the front page of the news and tell everybody we're having too many 100-year floods. So ARI doesn't work very well for a couple of reasons. Annual exceedance probability doesn't flow off the tongue so well. It's not quite so easy. But from a pure statistical term, it's so much easier for us to calculate. And it's really about annualized risk. So if someone says, what does it mean? It's about betting on a horse race each year. Am I going to win with my 100 to 1 long shot? Or in this case, you wouldn't win, you'd lose because your house might get flooded. Or am I going to not? And so that's how flooding really does work. It's an annualized risk. And like we've had a big flood here in Sydney, or a big rainfall event in Western Sydney. Well, not really big, about 1 in 15, 1 in 20 years at Windsor. I can tell you, if we have a flood now, we've got about a 1 in 4 chance of having another flood as big between now and August because of the way rainfall works. And you can express it as chance per year. You have a 1 in 100 chance per year of this event occurring. And next year, it resets. you're back again. You have another 1 in 100-year chance. You're not safe for 100 years. You can't build houses on the floodplain and hope it's not going to happen for 100 years. It doesn't work like that. So we've changed that, and I got a lot of grief from my profession, so maybe some of you can add to that. But I'm hoping what I've said makes a little bit of sense, but maybe not if you're looking quite vague. So the other thing we've done is for frequent rainfalls, and I presume people use that for other things in your profession, in your groups, like something that happens every 3 months or something that happens once a year. So we've changed a few things too. We don't use a 1 year, something that happens every 1 year or every 3 months. If it's 3 months, we'd use the term you get 4 exceedances per year on average, not one every 3 months. And we're going, why are you doing that? It's because of seasonality. If you design something for a rainfall that occurs every 3 months, I can tell you if you're in Sydney, Melbourne or Brisbane, like something that takes 5 minutes of rainfall to overflow, they'll all happen in summer. They won't happen in winter. Well, some will, but basically bugger all. So it happens every 3 months, but most of them will be in the warm 6 months and none of them basically will be in the cold 6 months. So it's not really 3 months apart. It's like you get 4 a year. How far apart they are is just an average. It's not what happens. Now, I've probably confused a few of you, but I've got a picture here. This is the Rosetta Stone, a bit of history. Napoleon's army dug it up in Egypt. The British turned up, had a bit of a bun fight with them. The French they retreated. There was a bit of a negotiation. Anyway, the Poms nicked it off the French as part of the deal. And what it did is it translated Greek hieroglyphics, Egyptian hieroglyphics, Egyptian writing more in the conventional sense like we use, and Greek. And that was how they cracked hieroglyphics from Egypt. Well, people in my profession are smart, so we've just put a table up, and one of my colleagues at the Bureau calls it the Rosetta Stone. It's in Australian rainfall and runoff. And I should say, Australian rainfall and runoff's free. You can download it. You can cut anything out of it. You can use it. You can put it in any of your industry documents. You can do anything you like with it, as long as you say where you nicked it from. It's called Creative Commons. You can use any content from it you like. Every picture in there, you're free to use, or every table and every diagram. And so this table basically translates these 3 different languages: exceedances per year, annual exceedance probability, and ARI. So if you take anything away from tonight, you can go, oh, don't have to worry about this anymore. It's all too hard. I'm just going to look at this one table and it'll translate it. And what you'll notice if you look at it is, if we look at a 1 in 10 or a 10% AEP, it's not quite the same as, it's not a 10-year ARI. If you look up there, it'll say 9.49. It's nearly the same, so you can probably ignore it. But if we look at a 2-year, do you design anything for a 2-year basis? No, that's good. That's the hardest one. If you look up there, a 1 in 2 AEP, it's a 1.44 average recurrence interval. And that's because some years you'll get 2 floods or 2 rainfall events, and some years you'll get none, and some years you'll get 1. And so most of my profession, they don't want to work out the statistics. It's a bit hard for them. They just look at this table and it solves all their problems. And so if you want to do that. Now, in terms of rainfall, for people who are sort of my age or a little bit older, if you're using the old rainfall from the Bureau, when doing things like gutters, that was calculated in 1987. And if you're looking at, say, a 5-minute rainfall or a 6-minute rainfall, back in 1987, we had 14 long-term rain gauges in the whole country, just 14. We had 1 in Sydney and 1 in Newcastle and 1 in Brisbane and 1 in Cairns. And so we went from the first graph where the blue dots are the daily red rain gauges, where somebody goes out every day at 9 o'clock. They don't go out on Sunday morning, though. They're all hungover, and so you never believe a rainfall. And they read the rain gauge and they write it down. And the red ones are where we measure how much rainfall occurs every 5 minutes or hour or whatever it happens to be. But only 14 of those were long term. The other graph with all the red dots on it is what we've got now. So we went from 14 gauges to about 1,000. And that meant that our rainfall estimates are heaps more accurate. The Bureau did a pretty good job on actually working out the rainfalls, and it was a huge project. So rainfalls will change. Now, probably talked about all the rubbish on this graph, so I might move on. Did they go up? Some places they went up. Where it's blue, they went up. Newcastle went up a lot. This is 1 hour rainfalls. Probably not really something you have to deal with that much. You're probably in the smaller than that. The red and orange is where it went down on the south coast mainly. It went down around Kempsey as well. And that's because they had a lot more data. We had some much better statistical techniques. And you'll see a very similar graph to this if you looked at 5 minutes. And the reason why it went red down on the south coast is we didn't have any rain gauges down there, so they just assumed what was happening in Sydney would happen down there. They just extrapolated all the way down to Victoria. Now, long-term rainfalls, which I don't, is that an issue for your practice area? Probably not. They didn't change very much, so we can probably skip that. So I was talking about a 3-month average recurrence interval. This is a picture from Brisbane, right? And this is which months for the gauge their rainfall occurs. The first column is January, we go all the way to December. And you can see that in winter, we don't get many rainfall events that are quite that rare. But it all happens in summer, in the warmer areas. And we would normally historically have called that a 3-month ARI, average recurrence interval. We can have a look at what happened in the wettest year. We didn't get 4 of them in the year every 3 months. This year we got about 9. Another year we got 1. So the average is really important. That's not telling you too much. And in fact, if we look at the time between events, like 3 months, the only one that's wrong is 3 months. You're more likely to get them at about a month or about 6 months, because you'll get probably 3 or 4 in summer and none in winter. And so average recurrence interval, that's telling you absolutely nothing about how the time is between events. Have I lost people on that? No? Nick's looking a bit confused. I might have to quiz him later. And this is how many events occurred in different years. That goes back to 1907 to sort of nowish. And you can see some years had 1, some had 2, some years had 9. And this is how many you get in a year. Some years had 1, some had 2, some had 3. But events per year, you typically get on average 4 a year. So we've replaced ARI, average recurrence interval, with the reverse of that, which is events per year. And you get normally 4, but you can see that you can get other amounts as well. And you get the same thing with a 2-year. But if you're just dealing with a 1 in 100 or a 1% AUP, annual exceedance probability, then it's exactly the same as a 100-year ARI. Just don't tell the media that, because they drive us mad. And in terms of climate change, I don't know, a lot of people say, I don't believe it, it's not real. In 1987, Australian Rainfall and Runoff, I hadn't graduated uni, acknowledged that people were starting to really worry in the meteorological flood space about climate change and how to affect our climate. So it's not something that's new. And this time around, we provide some guidance based on a working group with CSIRO, Bureau, and a couple of universities. And what happens with climate change? We're heating the world up. If the atmosphere is warmer, you can hold more moisture in the atmosphere, so you can get more rain. That part's pretty simple. When you try and move any further, it goes from very simple to very, very complicated. But basically, a warmer climate will mean that short duration events, like 5 minutes, will get heavier. And that is what we're seeing in this country. And the other thing we're seeing is that not only will the rainfalls get heavier, you can think about the really intense part of the storms getting more intense, and the bit that the leading up to the storm, where you just get a little bit of rainfall, a little bit of dribble, and the bit after the storm will actually get less. So more rainfall will move to the intense part. So if you're designing something that has to take a particular rainfall, it's actually going to get harder. Now, in terms of what happens with climate change, we don't know with any great exactness because it's a very complex process, but we've done some work with CSIRO and the Bureau of Meteorology, and we've came up with some percentage increases. And I don't know if you can read this from down the back, but if we all walk home tonight, we don't catch the car, and you sell your car, or you probably throw your car away, and you commit to going to net zero about next week, rainfalls by 2090 are going to go up by about 10% anyway. That's what we call RCP 4.5, representative concentration pathways. So if we stopped making extra CO2 right now, rainfalls are going to go up. And if you look at that table there, they're going to go up by 4.3% by about 2030. And 2030 is not very far away. So the rainfalls we're using are probably underestimated already because we're 2022. And if we continue as business as usual, rainfalls are probably going to go up by about 20%. It says 19.7, but it's so inexact. It could be 20, it could be 15, it could be 25. So these rainfalls that cause havoc, whether it's on a house or a yard or a major river, are going to go up. And the ones that are probably going to go up the most are the ones on a roof or in a backyard because there's not limiting factors. So hopefully I've answered a few questions on rainfall. Nick's now looking worried, so I'm going to get a hard question. Australian rainfall and runoff, you want to see that picture of what I call the Rosetta Stone, or you want to know what's happening with climate change, it's all online, it's all free. You can Google it and it'll pull up, or I can give some links if your group wants to send them out. Hopefully, Nick, I've met your brief. Okay, and I'm happy to take questions if anybody wants to ask any. And don't be shy about asking a question like.
All right, we've got a roving mic, so anyone's got any questions, there's people online as well, so maybe just announce your name and just answer your questions. So put your hand up if you've got any questions. Someone must have a question. No way, it's Rodney Ware.
Thanks for coming along, first and foremost. I've been for a number of years using the bomb site to get IFD tables, 1987 version, which I'm sure we all have. When I've tried to use the newer version, it seems to come out with a different table.
They've changed the formatting, which was a bit of a pain in the neck for people. But you should get the same information. Or did you get intensities in the past and you got depths?
Well, to be honest, I'm not sure. I've tried a couple of times and maybe it's me messing it up each time, but I was hoping that basically the headings of the column would change from 100 to 1% and 20 to 5%, and the numbers would stay the same, right? Or do they not?
So obviously the 87 data, that's changed. We've now got 2016, so that the numbers have got, the depths have gone, all the intensities have changed, but there is a button down on the left-hand side which says turn the depths to intensities or the intensities to depths.
Right.
And I reckon if you tick that,
That's
90% of your problems will go away.
that sounds good.
And we're lucky that's there because getting the Bureau to change anything takes about 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, that's certainly still what I'm after, millimeters per hour sort of thing that you can put into a flow calc. So,
yep.
Awesome.
Nikki, you got a question?
My one's simple, but who funds
Australian rainfall and runoff?
Yeah.
So we got about $12 million from the Australian government in about, well, I had to run the project. That was the booby prize when I got the money. And some of that went to the Bureau and some of that went to CSIRO and some of it went to industry. And we did the project. And then when the money ran out, everybody ran away and everything's been left with me. And a little bit like you, Nick, I run a consulting firm and I also maintain most of the web pages and all of the other stuff other than the bit the Bureau does. So we will need to update that. I'm sure you've seen some stuff in the media, like people are saying, well, maybe things have changed, and I'm pretty sure they have too. And we're not far away from 2030. No hard probability questions.
Rod
Come
again.
on.
No one else is putting their hand up. Just curious on, you talk about the intensities changing. We use drains maybe on a small scale compared to what you do in terms of maybe a small OSD system for a development. What does the data that's come up, do you know if it's been incorporated into that
Yes.
software in terms
So,
of
so
data?
drains looks up the Bureau's data from AR&R 2016, pretty much does it automatically last time I used it. And I'm pretty sure you can tick a box and it'll say update it for climate change for those scenarios as well.
Okay.
But if you think about it with climate change, what's the design life for something you're designing? Is it 10 years, 50 years?
block of units, maybe 20,
Yep.
25?
Yep. So you want them to, do you want it to
If
sort
that.
of work today or do you want it to work in 25
I'm
years?
getting a lot of laughs here. Does anyone think it's more than that?
Depends how well built it is, doesn't it?
For a block of units? 100 years, okay. Well, that's my thought process, right? The stadium lasts 20 years. Hospitals, schools, absolutely a bit longer, but I think a lot of things won't last that long.
But I guess the question we're grappling with is, do you design it so it works today but doesn't work tomorrow? Or you design it so it works on the last day of its life before you knock it down?
Yeah.
Or do you design it so it performs well over the life of the...
Well, and I think the numbers you put up there about that, even if we were to go as green as possibly green tomorrow, you're still looking at a 10% increase.
Yeah.
I think that was the number you put up there. And
Oh, I think we're looking at the middle one. I'll have to put my glasses on down the bottom. So yeah, 11%, 12%.
10%,
Yep.
yeah, that's a long way from what we're designing right now.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Has anyone online got any questions? Don't think anyone's ever asked that question before. Alrighty, 3, 2, 1. Let's give it a big wrap. Thank you, Mark. Big hands of applause for Mark. Thank you. We'll let Tom finish his meal and we'll reconvene in about 5 minutes. Is that okay, Tom? Yeah, thumbs up. Done deal. Thank you.
think you're doing this. Yeah.
Yeah, the end. Cool. Just click that.
Alrighty, it's the main event. Please make sure you got your questions ready for the wise one. Big round of applause for Tom Wise, who's going to do a presentation on balcony drainage. Over to you, Tom.
Thanks. Thanks, Paul. I should say thanks to Nick actually for inviting me onto the committee as like a technical advisor so many years ago. A bit kicking and screaming, but I'm happy to be here. I forget what my title is now. Legislation and something. But thank you. Welcome, Paul, and also welcome to the new directors and happy birthday, Bob Welsh. So as Nick sort of alluded to, I sit on a few committees that deal with water shedding, waterproofing, shower grates, balconies, through the building commissioner, a few things through New South Wales, and some bigger working groups that hopefully will inform the BCA and will make some changes. So I should recognise some of the groups, as I have been doing thus far. And also note that a few of my images are material that I've borrowed, so it's not necessarily been referenced as such because I ran out of time. Disclaimer, we're going to talk about some stuff that might happen and some stuff that won't happen and just some stuff generally, so don't get too excited. And I'm not necessarily representing the working groups that I sit on, but today I'm just speaking as myself and a representative of the HCAA. So just helping inform the community as to what might happen and what's going on. Questions? I think I'll just raise a lot of questions. So no questions. Rod's out of the room, so I'll probably get pretty lucky. Training. There's a really good training course on water shedding put together by Ross Taylor. It's dirt cheap. I'd recommend that everybody sort of just jump online, buy it for their company or their staff or whatever they might be up to, and just have a run through it, because you'll find that most of the issues when it comes to water shedding, which is a new term that we've come up with, which is basically the whole encompassing drainage, waterproofing, and keeping water out of spots that it shouldn't get into, training package. So check that out. I've also taken a few slides from it as well, so you'll hopefully enjoy those on the way. So the systemic problem. Basically, a good bit of work has been done by the Building Commissioner to date. And as you see, like 30%, or 39% of buildings built in the last 6 years have really suffered some major defects. 89% of those on resi buildings, hence why we're sort of working on class 2 at the moment to start with. You'll see a great deal of those defects actually sit in the waterproofing and water shedding sort of area. So that's 63%. That's greater than fire services, which one would think most people probably make errors on. Greater than structure as well. So some buildings around Australia did get a lot of light when they had some structural issues, but waterproofing and water tightness really ticks the box. And then a bit of further analysis demonstrates that 90% of the errors are actually started in the design phase prior to the contractors rushing to try and complete a design or fumbling around trying to construct a design. So some food for thought. We'll start with wet areas. So the BCA at the moment talks to floor waste in wet areas. Without picking on the Australian Building Codes Board, there needs to be a little bit of work when it comes to the performance-based requirement and also the deemed to satisfy provision. It doesn't really stipulate any qualifications or metrics that you can measure that against. So is it the need to drain 2 showers with a single floor waste, or do we need to consider a failed flexi connector in the bathroom? These are some of the discussions that we've been having as a working group to determine the viability and the reason of having a floor drain within a wet area. When we move on a little bit more, some of the stuff that we've looked at as to surface tension depends on the roughness of the surface. It's probably between 2 to 3 millimeters generally. It's quite a factor when it comes to the ability to maintain liquid within a certain enclosed boundary. This is a standard sort of ensuite shower, and I've just demonstrated that a standard 2.5% fall sort of sees about 25 millimeters in difference between the grate height and the door. Following a burst flexi hose, where you see about 1.7 litres per second theoretically at 500 kPa, which is the maximum pressure, like the deemed to satisfy pressure coming out of a broken hose, although I did do it from the 19 BP, so there is a little bit of inaccuracy there. We actually exceed the European standard for testing and designing floor waste grates. So that would see us with a greater depth than 30 millimeters, which would see us with water exiting our door at the drop of a hat. So once again, we probably need to think about what we're actually trying to achieve here, how many showers we need to go down the drain. I must say, in our literature review, we haven't been able to find an Australian standard or some guidance that actually tests floor wastes and their grate inlet capacity and the depth over them, and whether or not that will actually overtop a 900 by 900 millimeter shower. So that's probably out to the jury a little bit at the moment as well. It's quite a good example of one of those situations that somebody thought, oh, well, we'll pop the grate close to the door. Somebody probably needs to do a bit of cleaning in their bathroom as well. But in this instance, the shower flow was well exceeding the grate capacity, overtopping, using the floor waste within the general wet area quite a bit. So its annual exceedance probability really went over what would reasonably be desired. So there's a little bit of work that might need to be done in this area, which the committee has been sort of producing a guide as to what good looks like. We haven't really stipulated down to the fact that manufacturers probably should start testing in Australia and probably should start identifying the depth over their grates that they sell, especially at Bunnings. But I think there needs to be some definition. What should a floor waste do? What shouldn't a floor waste do? Mandate manufacturers to start flow testing. We need to touch the BCA and update some of their performance-based requirements, and also nominate a practitioner who's going to be responsible for this, because at the moment, the floor waste grates selected generally on look, not necessarily performance, and that's fine so long as the rest of the componentry is designed as such. So the whole intent is to keep the water in the shower, if that's the actual want, and also keep the water in the wet area so as to not breach the performance-based requirement as it is. We'll move on to rainwater drainage. So rainwater drainage is quite an interesting topic in the Class 2 buildings. Balconies are quite a difficult thing to design. And as the BCA sort of moves forwards, the BCA is looking at further enabling DDA access, which is a really good move for the industry and people alike. So that sort of starts to generate a few problems in the building industry with threshold differences between inside and out, head depths over rainwater outlets and the like. Some of the good things that the BCA is bringing in is 1.2% falls, or 1 in 80 if you prefer ratios, in structural slabs. And that sort of encourages water to move to outlets and takes a realization that a membrane isn't a perfect barrier. A membrane cracks, breaks, the structure over its 10-year life expectancy moves greater than the membrane's actual tolerance. And so getting back to some real basic principles really help there. And then those falls obviously fall to drainage outlets. Yep. No. Sorry, Rod. At the moment, the work that we're doing, we're not discriminating between the two, but I think eventually when it filters down to the deemed to satisfy provisions, yes, there should be. Yeah. So at the moment, our BCA as it is really general, which is good because it obviously covers generally every instance. But at the same time, it points us to a deemed to satisfy provision that doesn't necessarily satisfy every instance. In the new 2022, you'll see under that deemed to satisfy provision now, a note to say, hey, we recognize we don't satisfy every single instance. And if you are sitting outside of those instances, engage somebody to undertake a performance-based solution. So some of the stuff that the ASMZS 3500.3 does do, I won't read those out because we all know what they do. And we might talk about some of the things that they don't do. So they don't really do balconies very well. They don't really do concrete roofs very well, very limited when it comes to valley gutters. And they don't really talk about multi-story car parks. And I won't go on because I've got a limited amount of time. So the principles of watershedding, this is really what I was supposed to talk about, but I'm going to talk about a lot of other stuff. So realistically, you've got to collect, redirect, and drain. So when you start to look back at things, look what's falling from the sky, redirect it with the concrete falls with your structural engineer friends, and then drain it in the drainage system and ensure that that's adequate. In addition, use gravity, keep it simple, and design for failure. That's probably a new term that I've started using with the building commissioner at the moment, because we've talked about fail safes over the years and overflows. I think we need to maybe change our language to go, we need to understand that things do break, things do fail, and therefore we have a redundancy to ensure that our building doesn't flood. And when we go back to the BCA performance requirements, it says, hey, don't let a 1% storm in the building. So we need to design to fail. The principle has been around for a long time. 10 BC, there's some really good old books of architecture. And when we jokingly look back, they recommend for drainage of water, a 1 in 79 grade, approximately 1.26%. And we've sort of fallen back on that only a few years later. What is water? Water's a bit of a beast. It's a shapeshifter. It shifts between mediums. It's a universal solvent. So, don't let it get to the nuts and bolts because eventually they'll leave. It complies with gravity, capillary action. It's subject to wind pressure and the like. So it really is an interesting object that nobody can necessarily predict in every instance. So some of the things that we have done really well over the years. So on the left-hand side is your general brick veneer drain cavity. This is pretty fail-proof and foolproof as well. So we realize that the bricks or the mortar let water in from time to time. We let it run down the inside face of the brick, and then we have a nice drainage barrier at the back, all with a bit of fall because it's falling with gravity vertically down, which then protects the inside of our house. In the modern day, we've sort of forgotten it, where we're painting on membranes on flat slabs that doesn't direct the water to the actual drainage outlet. So, right, wrong, it depends. So these are some interesting observations that we've kind of made through our literature review, some things that we've looked at and the like. So one of the interesting things is 70% pipe fullness. A lot of the international standards refer to 70% pipe fullness, and that's to avoid this situation, which from time to time you'll actually see. So this is an instance where general surface flow, which is flow that sees both air and water mixed together quite nicely, that ends up seeing just water within the pipework. And as we all know, water generally takes the path of least resistance, and from time to time, it will bubble out an outlet. So there's two instances, well, within these videos that are easily that are observable, that demonstrates that. So this is something that maybe the Australian market should start to think about. At the moment, our deemed to satisfy provisions don't refer to suspended structures. So maybe the civil engineering guidance that we have at the moment, pit to pit, where a pit provides a venting ability, might not necessarily be the best approach when it comes to horizontal drainage or suspended structures, and also the vertical, according to, this is out of the EN 12056.3, and also the DIN standard picks it up, and the Singaporean standard. So something to think about in design work. So realistically, a lot of this is caused by uniform and non-uniform flows. So when you have a nice uniform flow, you have the equal amount of water going down both pipes and therefore equal pressure, and therefore you're unlikely to see water bubble out of your traps. But then when we look at what a traditional conventional system looks like, you end up with air entering, so you end up with annular flow, so you should have a swirl effect around the outside of the pipe, hence your hence your air entering the system. When you end up with a submerged outlet, you end up with a full bore pipe, and between the two, you end up with an oscillating flow. So it's actually pretty good. I just need to keep pressing that rather than clicking. So if I fast forward this video, we did some work with some test rigs, and I can't fast forward this video, so I've got to talk for 4 minutes while it plays. So this test rig, we were looking at actually testing the flow capacity of floor waste, but we started with a rainwater outlet just to sort of observe the differing states of flow between weir flow, which it is at the moment, which is water entering the grate without the grate being drowned. And then when the grate sort of moves between weir and orifice, and it oscillates between the two, which actually blocks off your air, and you end up in a siphonic action for a small period of time before it drops off. This obviously is the fault that can blow out floor drains further down the building. So a bit of a difficult one. What's also observable is on my next slide, if we ever get to the part, yeah, you can start to see it oscillate here, where you see it jump up and down. It's gone back into weir. Anyway, we'll jump on. There's some really nice terms when it comes to the different sorts of swirl effects, which was well defined by Beecham and O'Loughlin back in the day at UTS. So if we have a little bit more of a look as to why things go into full flow and how we probably want to avoid that, a lot of it is small pipes and reducers in pipes, which cause hydraulic jumps, which then cause the potential downstream pipe work to then start to flow full. So when we look back at a Class 2 building and we have a lot of 50 mil pipes cast into slabs, it ends up being a bit of an interesting situation, hence the bubbling floor grates. The bottom item actually just identifies a standard 50 mil diameter pipe, standard balcony. Under full flow, if you use Manning's calculation, you're probably at 2 odd liters per second. If you're running 70% full, you reduce that to 0.66. So that's quite a dramatic capacity reduction compared to maybe what might be standard practice. I borrowed some slides from Mark Alexander and the HCAA Research Foundation, but this is a metallic downpipe that has run full and ended up in a negative pressure. And if you look back at the metal, it's no longer cylindrical, and obviously saw the effects of the negative pressure. So quite an interesting effect. Jump onto suspended pavers. So we did a lot of work with two of our colleagues, Fernando and Dr. Jeff O'Loughlin on this. So suspended pavers is something that will move in probably to designs a little bit more often than not to assist with compliance with the new DDA requirements. This is surface tension on suspended pavers. So as it turns out, there's about 3 millimeters of surface tension that generally will sit on a suspended paver, which obviously needs to be considered when we're determining set downs. So this led us to a fairly large spreadsheet where we ended up being able to fairly accurately determine the flow depth to enter one of the 3 millimeter cracks between pavers. And some of the best arrangements were sort of 600 by 600 paver formats, 3 millimeter gap between the pavers as a fail-safe, 10 millimeters around the perimeter, except for the door where you probably don't want your high heel to go down between that. And then be careful of small areas with large format pavers because they don't have a great inlet capacity. And if you have something flowing over onto the Juliet balcony, let's say, you've got a lot of splashback and a lot of water likely to enter the building. Kindly enough, one of the paver manufacturers had some good test data from a French testing laboratory. You can see some of our testing top right there. So we checked some of the standard formula. The one that really races up is the Weir calculation, so not necessarily applicable. Benilli's theoretical estimate, which was very hard to actually replicate. The brown line is the measured, and an orifice flow with no constraint, you normally end up with 0.6, is the line that almost fits for most, except for down the bottom and the top. And then with a constraint of 0.6 was very conservative. So you've got a bit of an idea as to what you might be able to use in practice. Deflection and hogging. This is something that the course that TAFE is sort of offering online really sort of brings to light. So deflection and hogging occurs over the 10-year sort of life of a structure, or that's the majority of it. A good proportion within the first 18 months, and then the remainder over a 6-year period. The top left photo is a balcony example where the deflection actually was 138 millimeters, which is huge. So that caused all that ponding based on the designer's original positioning of the outlet. Bottom left is just a simple diagram of residential building. And then over here is the hogging and sagging diagram. So the dark colors are the downs and the blue colors are the ups. If you look at where the ups are, they're always along the columns and any load-bearing walls. And if you look at where a Class 2 building normally positions its outlets, it's on that top diagram against the load-bearing wall. And so this is the mathematical outcome for this building. 15 plus 4 equals 19 millimeters. So where you actually started 10 years ago, your outlet is therefore 19 millimeters higher because the rest of the slab sagged, or it's hogged a little bit as well, than where you wanted to be. So if we look at the bottom diagram, that's where you need to be. So part of the principle that we're trying to get across as to what good looks like is chat to the structural engineer. They're the primary waterproofer. That's why the BCA is starting to bring in 1.8 or 1.25% falls to floor waste in the structural slab to try and mitigate some of the risk of hogging. If you need to be at the high point, consider the hogging and fall the slab a little bit more. Back to the design to fail. So design to fail in conjunction with the structural engineer. So this is some of the work as to what the good guide might look like, where determination of the top water level is very important. Determination of the overflow position and the top water level in conjunction with that is important. Trying to keep water out of the building is the key initiative. And then as you see, there's a nice fall on that diagram to the drain to ensure if the membrane does fail, which it probably is likely to fail, that there's still natural gravity and some of the forces that water complies with to move it towards the outlet. Otherwise, you need a fan to move it along. So where to? At the moment, we're trying to better define terms of use within this area. So we're trying to bring water shedding on as an art and something that you do with your friends who's a structural engineer, the person who applies the membrane, and of course the drainage consultant and the architect ties it all together, rather than the lack of coordination days where the structural engineer referred to the architect's drawing for the falls and the floor waste location. The architect referred to the hydraulic engineer's drawings or the hydraulic designer's drawings, and they referred back to the structural engineer and the architect. And there's quite a good few slides on that in the trainage package, which is quite the good giggle. So we're looking to hopefully work with the Australian Building Codes Board on a little bit of a journey to provide some specific requirements for different system types. Because at the moment, we've got some overall principles. Don't let water get in the building. It's a nuisance. Need to introduce some sub-finished surface drainage requirements. Now, that's quite an important topic. Need to mandate, in my personal opinion, that manufacturers test their grates, because just selling a grate is one thing, but actually knowing its capacity and knowing how to determine the blue line there at the required flow rate to avoid flooding the building really is the premise of the whole Building Code of Australia in its current form. Provide some design guidance. So the committee did a fair bit of work, which isn't going to be published. So the HCAA will take on the publishment of some guidance, which will then be referred to within a technical standard published by Standards Australia as what good looks like. And I sort of started with this, but coordination and integration with the other designers on the project and understanding what they do and understanding what an engineer in plumbing and an engineer in drainage and a designer in plumbing and drainage actually does. So before we finish, we've got 2 more slides to go, or maybe 2 and a bit. Sub-finished surface drainage. This is really a systemic problem that we've seen a lot of. And unfortunately, trench drains are probably one of the root causes of this problem, where the membrane sits lower than the actual outlet, and there's no continuity between a lower drainage layer, subsurface, and an upper drainage layer. So I've probably explained that really badly, and I'm not tall enough to point. So this thin red line is the membrane. As water falls on the surface, water eventually seeps through this. And you've probably walked and enjoyed many prevalent buildings in the Sydney area that suffer this fate. And you'll actually find that there will be a water layer up to either the top of the membrane or all the way to the top of the paving, depending on where they terminated that membrane. And that's because, Okay, just here. And that's because the pipe here has come up and actually hard connected to the trench drain. And whether or not that's standard practice or not, it seems to occur a fair bit, therefore causing that ponding. If I actually reflect back on my own house and my own balcony on my second story, the contractor neglected to put any drainage in there, and it falls off the edge, which is very nice. But as you walk out there, you go slog, 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 as the tiles are floating in water, and eventually it enters the house. So subsurface or finished subsurface water is something that I think we should all start to consider, and maybe, I don't know, for want of a better word, start to talk to the industry a lot more about this and bring it to the forefront. So where does this need to go? My personal opinion is education really is first, you know, because a lot of people avoid the lower drainage layer. There's some really good outlets that actually do a great job. So probably consider those. Getting a section in the BCA, it's a real nuisance when it goes wrong, and it's very difficult to fix. And then some guidance around what to do, because at the moment, the Australian standard is very, very, very silent on this topic. Finally, before I shut up, spreaders and metal deck roofs. This is an interesting one that just happened to crop up for some reason, but there's a limited capacity that a pan in a metal deck roof will actually take. And designer obviously needs to be careful not to overwhelm that pan, or the water actually enters the building. So that pan, according to the manufacturer, carries 2.7 litres per second. And we all go, whoa, that's not a lot, you know, before you overwhelm that pan, and you might end up with water entering the underside of the sheet. This isn't something that we're going to be touching on in our working group, but just something that we stumbled over that I thought you guys might be interested in. Anyway, thank you very much. A nice photo of a gutter overflowing and a basin overflowing, because this is some of the things that we've been talking about thus far.
Thanks, Tom. Stand there. Question time. 17 minutes, Tom told me. 17 minutes. That wasn't 17 minutes. It wasn't 17. You didn't reference any DIN standards there, mate.
No, I should have given some reference.
Talking to the microphone, Tom. The microphone.
No. And great work to the people who've done research so far. I should have mentioned them up start, and I won't necessarily mention them all now, but it's been quite an eye-opening experience. And I should say a real big thank you for Dr. Jeff O'Loughlin, who has been a colleague up until just recently when he retired from the company that I work with. And he's been quite a good old grey-haired friend who has really sort of driven a lot of the stuff in the industry in the background, and hopefully we as an organisation and an industry can pick a lot of that up and things as Mark and his colleagues have done.
So we covered a lot there. Has anyone got questions at all?
Nick's gonna ask me what.
No, it's just a quick one. Liability, when you said 70% of those, yeah, is it the builder's premiums getting hit the hardest, or who are the lawyers after when these balconies fail? Because even though we may put a guidance note out on it, seems more in the structural and architectural space, because we're putting a drain in the middle of that.
Yeah.
So we need to understand the principles that are being designed to, but from a liability perspective, it's more driven from the lack of falls and
The person with the deepest pockets. They don't care.
yeah. So you probably, yeah, you're probably right, but yeah. Are you aware of, like, is it the builder that's being picked on the most, or does it filter down to the plumber and the hydraulic engineer? Or
It's not been talked about in any of the things that I sit on. I also sit on a group with KPMG where they're actually looking at a building rating system where they look at builders past, present, potentially, and predict their future based on failures of the past, the dollars that they have in the bank, the developers that they've teamed up with. So I'm definitely not answering the question, but the actual answer will be, it'll be proportionate liability, but I'm not a solicitor, so yeah.
Hang on. Nobody can hear me.
I believe in the standard 3500, which I don't read often, talks about branches going on in situ downpipes to a balcony outlet to be 90 millimeters. I don't know if I'm right or wrong when I say that, but I've got younger people telling me that it ought to be 90 mil. And to me, a 90 mil is a second grade PVC pipe that's made from recycled plastics. And I only ever normally draw 65 with 100 by 65 grate with a bend on it cast into the concrete slab, and then they put the membrane into that, and then they put the pedestal and the tile on top of the thing. But is 90 the correct answer to comply? Is a deemed to satisfy answer?
So to determine what a deemed to satisfy provision applies to, the scope of the standards sort of sets that out. To determine what a deemed to satisfy provision sort of applies to, if it refers to an Australian standard, the scope of the standard sort of sets out what that might be. It'd be my opinion that ASNZS 3500.3 doesn't apply to suspended structures because it doesn't clearly state that it is applicable for suspended structures. Now, there are probably many differing opinions in the room, and that's okay and that's fine. But I think that it probably needs to state that clearly that it does apply. So maybe, Greg, that could be carried in the stormwater drainage system, which is talking about pipes within the ground and the like, and not necessarily suspended pipes. So maybe the question is the deemed to satisfy provision applicable for suspended balconies? And if not, therefore the 90 millimeter pipe doesn't get a knock-on effect.
I believe the standard says that a residential property should have a 90 mil connection. Well, it might have changed, but
Go
that's
on,
the
Dave,
last I
come
read.
on.
Might have been 90 mil connection.
The woodsman.
Hey, see, let's bring it up. This is the conversation we want to have.
Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking. It was put in the standard because architects were putting 50 mil downpipes in buildings. So we tried to get something written in, which was 90, or I think it says 100 by 50 downpipes. It was never meant, and then the next clause down talks about balconies, and it was never meant to be a minimum size for a balcony drain. It's just that it's being interpreted that way.
Okay. 'Cause I've been doing
By PCAs as well. I don't know how the PCAs got onto it, but the PCAs got onto it. So, but it's not the intent of the standard, not the PCA, to have 90 mils on balconies.
That's okay, because I've not given them. I've only given, and I would like to thank my learned flood engineer, Mark, that came and gave us his good advice today. Thank you. But to answer some of your questions, there's only two numbers that I work to. If it falls to Neves gutter, I use 230 millimeters an hour for a gutter sizing. If it falls to a box gutter, it's 273. And now I don't bother with the 220 because of all the fucking rain that's come out of the sky just recently. And I've been doing it for nearly 40 years now, and nobody's ever rang me up and told me I've got my stormwater stuff wrong. And the most important thing the young people in the audience can get is that you need to understand the relationship between head of water over orifice. Head over orifice, it applies in your personal life and in your public life, but that's the most important thing that you can learn about. All right, because it will drive down pipe sizing and how efficient horizontal drain pipes are. And that'll do for me. I'm getting too old.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Of course, there's always one.
I'm intrigued by the image. If you go back a couple of slides where you had the infiltration through the tiling
Yeah.
on the balcony.
Yeah.
So what I commonly see now is a 100 mil riser for a balcony outlet with a 50 mil side outlet. I don't like those. I would much rather use something that has an integrated sort of puddle flange cast into the slab. Is that what you're getting at?
Yep.
Saying this is what's failing, and that we
Yep.
should be using something like a,
So
don't want to mention brands, but say SPS has a really good one that has a flange that comes
Sure.
into that outlet and goes sideways.
So do
I don't
other
know of too many others that
manufacturers
do that.
like ACO. They all have
ACO.
an integrated.
Oh, sorry,
membrane.
ACO. My bad.
But yeah, you've sort of hit the nail on the head. There's
Mm.
many things out there that are used, and maybe they shouldn't be primarily used as a drainage thing.
Yeah. I mean,
Paul's
like you
telling
said,
to
you know,
into
we talk
this.
about Bunnings products, they're cheap.
Yep.
That's a push-in thing, and there's nothing else to stop that water flow getting down the side of the
Correct.
outlet,
Yeah.
right? And it's got nowhere else to go but into the slab, concrete cancer, whatever else happens.
Yep. And you'll see that some of the drop-in grates have a rubber ring that actually fit them quite nicely in the pipe while the tiler's tiling it. That also stops the water entering the pipe on the subsurface layer, even if the waterproofer has provided, you know, a nice paddle flange down here and everything else correct.
Yeah.
Those drop-in grates are a bit dangerous. So there's many things that are sold on the market that probably
Yeah.
deem
They're cheap,
practitioners
easy,
to fail.
quick.
Yep.
All that, yeah. And if I may, you had a section there of a slab that showed the falls, but you didn't nominate a step down. And
This
I
is,
think one of my comments would be, we have this eternal sort of challenge with the architect and the builder and the client on what that set down should be from the internal floor level. By the time you have a set down, you have, I mean, and if we're, I think you had a graphic there before talking about 1.25% is the nominated suggestion. I mean, we work on 1%. That's hard enough to get across the line. It'd be great if it ends up regulated, because then we can just say, well, that's what you have to do. But that step down in the slab is going to get even bigger. That compromises the height of the floor to floor. Like, there's a lot of knock-on effects to doing that.
Sure.
But we have a lot of struggle telling the architect that we need 50 to 80 mil fall to get to that outlet. Plus, then you've got to have your overflow.
Yeah.
And
so,
I assume everyone in this room that's a hydraulic consultant has the same arguments day to day. But I think that's one of the bigger issues, is educating them on what's going to go wrong when it fails.
and hopefully the training package sort of does that as well. So we've talked to Institute of Architects, and they're actually taking that on board. So if you want to be registered in the Institute of Architects, you actually have to have covered and completed the watershedding drainage package. So it's a good step to sort of start to take steps to getting people there. The minimum at the moment, according to an Australian standard, is 70 millimeters. It's 4.6 something 0.2. And that is referenced in. Yep.
Yeah, but you don't have to do that yet. With this new regulation, that'd be great. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
This one here.
Yeah. we've
Oh
seen-
yeah,
we've seen
I
it.
can. We could
Absolutely.
all. We've all drunk at that building before.
Yeah.
It's well renowned. Very, very well renowned. If you haven't been there, you haven't been a tourist in Sydney.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Mhm.
But
Yes.
Hey, Greg, hang on, sorry, just, I agree with you, but the rules say that we have to account for 50% of the vertical face. Yeah, but, okay, so if the rules are wrong, we need to change them. Yeah. So who
Alright.
changes the rules?
So we're drifting off topic
Yeah.
here. I think we should probably tie it up.
Thank you.
Big round of applause for Tommy. Thank you. Nick, are we doing the Wheel of Fortune? We've got a birthday spinner. We need to get Bobby out, don't we? Come on, Bobby. Up you come, Bob. We're going to do the Wheel of Fortune. We're going to do the lucky door prize. Yes. Are you going to lift it up? Because I'll just spill it. Come up, Bob. Big round of applause to Bobby for his birthday. Happy birthday, Bob. Give it a twirl and pick out a ball. Go for it, Bob. The suspense. He's going to pick out his own number, isn't he?
$155.
Kent Lambourne from Ream, Australia.
Come on down and receive your prize. Woo! Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Bobby. There you go, mate. Well done. Congratulations. Okay, where's Nick gone? Nick, what happens next? Okay, so just to wrap up, these are the dates of the next meetings. You probably just heard Nick saying that. You can read it there, but I mean, Adelaide's got the next meeting on the 17th of May, if anyone's down that way. And also in Hobart, the 26th of May, at Novotel Canberra. And then our next meeting is on the 12th of July here at the Caribbean Club. And then next 9th of, I've got to read all this out, yeah? Is that what you normally do? 19th of July is in Adelaide at the Adelaide Pavilion. And then we've got another one in Hobart in the Hobart Showground on the 28th of July. And the final one we've got there is Novotel Canberra on Tuesday, the 27th of September. Is that it? It's a wrap. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending, and see you later. Oh, we want to get some photographs with the committee. So, Rodney, where? Where's my? Roll call.
Oh, okay. I need Dave Wood, Nick, Tom, Max, Rod. You have to come back. Okay. And Matt Lloyd and Sean Wallace, please.
To the front, mate. Next to Nick.